Welcome to the Beyond Fat Loss podcast, where we don't just stop at fat loss. You learn about all the good stuff that follows: how to build muscle, how to enjoy more food, and how to stay lean without going to extremes. We are your hosts, Sean and Katie, and today we're going to answer a key question we hear quite a lot. How do I actually know if I'm building muscle?
The answer seems obvious because if you build muscle, you'll see it. But the issue with that is that it takes time for muscle to grow. You have to perform multiple sessions for months on end, eating enough calories, making sure you're hitting your protein target. You need to sleep well, you need to recover well, and so on and so forth. Most of us need to see some sort of progress or results to be motivated enough to continue chasing our goals, especially when it's as slow as something like building muscle. So the real question is, if I can't see the muscle growth in the short term, how can I tell if I'm doing the right stuff to be able to see it in the long run?
By the end of this podcast, you'll know some of the obvious and the not so obvious signs that you're building muscle. We'll talk about ways to increase your enjoyment in the process, to prevent it from getting too repetitive or boring, and you'll have much more realistic expectations about the muscle building journey so you don't get disheartened if progress seems slow. So then, Sean, let's kick things off by talking about the most obvious sign you're building muscle: the visual transformation.
We have to start with this one, right? Because building muscle is as much of a visual result as anything else. It's something that you can clearly see. You can tell when somebody's been lifting weights on a regular basis. It's a bit of a giveaway that they've been doing some sort of physical training if they have more muscle. It's very unlikely to see a well-muscled individual that's purely from genetics. Progress pictures are what I would deem to be the gold standard way of checking muscle growth. They're a much more objective comparison. Whilst people will have their own opinions about whether or not they can see things change when they look at their progress pictures, because in my experience, people are typically quite harsh on themselves when they look at those progress pictures. In my experience, I am quite harsh on myself when I look at my progress pictures.
Just about to say.
But when they're side by side, different time points, it's a lot easier to make comparisons than trying to remember what you used to look like if you just take a glance in the mirror, for example.
Absolutely. We're living in our bodies day to day. We're not going to see those slow, subtle changes, and we're certainly not going to fully remember exactly what we looked like 6 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago. We don't really know. And when it comes to um, trying to identify if muscle's being built, it's a little different to just a fat loss transformation. And I've had to learn this throughout the years, because when you, just talking from my experience now, when you go for a fat loss transformation where you were losing 20 to 40 pounds, for example, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, it's clear to see when you've made progress, right? The silhouette usually just gets half the size, to be honest. It's easy to see. But the changes sometimes when it comes to muscle building, they're not as easy to always identify straight away, particularly if you're not used to looking for those changes in a photo translation, for example. And you helped me with this when I first needed to try to kind of shift my mindset from just the fat loss transformation to identifying the changes within a physique. Can you actually talk to listeners through that and what they can look at in pictures to understand if muscle's being built? Because it really helped me at the time.
So the way I would look at this is, for a start, if you're looking for a muscle building comparison, you need to be doing some form of posing in those progress pictures, because if you're not posing, then you can't really see the muscles. Like standing relaxed in front of the camera, front on, side on, then a picture of your back without actually tensing any of the muscles or flexing any of the muscles is not going to give you that much of an indication of whether you built muscle or not. You might see it over time, but it's a lot better to just do some basic posing. Now, you don't have to get a posing coach for bodybuilding shows to do that. You don't have to become a really professional poser. You can do really basic posing, really simple posing. I mean, you can find these on any Instagram page for somebody that does those bodybuilding shows, or even the influencers nowadays are pretty good at posing compared to the general public. Just take what you need from it, get yourself in a stance, tense your muscles a bit, and take the progress picture, and just try and be consistent with those poses.
Yeah, I agree. And have a bit of fun with them along the way as
Yeah,
well.
just have a laugh with it. Like we're not doing these for the point of posting it online and getting intense amount of critique from everyone that's going to criticize your posing technique. Nobody really cares about that stuff, to be honest. And you don't need to share these with anyone if you don't feel comfortable to, but they are there for you to see your signs of progress. And yeah, just have a bit of fun with it. Have a bit of a laugh with it. Don't need to take it too seriously, but in the same regards, I would also say try and do a good enough job at it, because if you practice your poses, you will get better at them. And then if your poses are better, you've got a more balanced comparison from one set of images to the next. It's more reliable because the poses look the same.
I think when you're talking about not taking it too seriously, that it's not that you don't want to kind of replicate the similar poses. It's more that just take the overall experience with a pinch of salt, take it a bit lighthearted, have a bit of fun with it. Well, not even when I first started, even now, I'm still wetting myself with some of the poses because for anyone that knows me, I'm not very good at this kind of stuff. And I think it's getting over that, just having a bit of fun with it. And then also just trying to replicate what you've done previously because you can then get that, I guess, that evidence that what you're doing is resulting in what you want to achieve. And results are a huge part of any journey, right? Without seeing them, you can quickly get disheartened with what's the point? It's not really working for me. And I think you can give yourself the best chance really to have more frequent check-ins to say, oh yeah, I am making progress. This is going in the right direction. So that you feel excited by the journey,
Yeah,
rewarded by it.
it's a highly visual result, and if you've not got visual confirmation that things are heading in the right direction, then it is hard to motivate yourself and celebrate that accomplishment and that achievement. And there are obviously lots of ways to celebrate progress from your training, but when you're aiming for a more muscular look, whether that be however you describe it, whether that's looking leaner, more toned, more defined, more muscular, big, sculpted, whatever word you want to use, they all involve building some form of muscle, right? So having confirmation that muscle is being built and that you are developing that physical element, I think is really important. And it's something that a lot of people will feel uncomfortable with when they first start. If they're not familiar with doing progress pictures, they may not have taken a picture of their body ever because they're that uncomfortable with it. Well, firstly, by taking those progress pictures, you are getting more comfortable with seeing your body, which everyone should be able to do. None of us should be looking at our body in the mirror every day and absolutely hating on ourselves. We should get comfortable with seeing our body and appreciating, what we've got and how we're progressing with things when we're making changes, right? So there's that element. But the second element is I've never worked with anybody that's looked back on their initial progress pictures when they started compared to where they've got to and been disappointed that they took those progress pictures
Mm-mm.
initially. No matter how uncomfortable it made them feel, no matter how frustrated they were with themselves at those starting progress pictures, that is the start. That's not where you're going to finish up. That's not where you're going to be forever. That's literally your day zero. And then every single time you take progress pictures from then, hopefully you should be progressing. And the more that goes down the line and the more you look back on those initial progress pictures, the more you're so pleased that you took those progress pictures because they validate all the hard work that you put in.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And most people don't feel comfortable taking those initial ones. But similar experience to you, Sean, I don't think I've ever had anyone say, "Oh, I wish I didn't take those beginning photos." It's normally like, "My God, I'm so glad I listened to you and took those before photos." We want to know we've done a good job, right? We want to know that we've got the results that we're working so bloody hard for. That's a way of recognizing that. Doesn't mean you have to share them everywhere, and doesn't mean you have to share them with anyone, but they're there for you to use how you see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I think people question their results more when they don't have those progress pictures than when they do have them.
Percent, 100%.
I bumped into Andy D in the gym the other day. He's had an amazing transformation over the course of about just coming up to 2 years, I believe now, round about that time frame. Dropped about 30 pounds initially, then maintained that for a little while, dropped a little bit more, then did a balance build phase, which he executed really well for about 4 months. Now gone back into lose a little bit more. Like his transformation from start to finish is absolutely incredible, and he's still going. He's still got more that he wants to achieve yet. And in the long run, most of his time is going to be spent building muscle, not losing fat. But from where he started, he's come such a long way. And I did a piece on Instagram celebrating some of his success, and I bumped into him in the gym, and he was just like, "Do you know what? I I saw those progress pictures, and I realized I need to give myself more credit." And I was like, "This is absolutely why you should be taking the progress pictures because that is a marker. It's a definitive part of your journey that you can always reflect on and see how far you've come." So for me, it's a non-negotiable. If you want a physical transformation, those progress pictures are, in my opinion, the most important thing you can do to track your progress other than weekly weigh-in, which we'll discuss later on.
It's like it's like getting a medal for winning a competition, right? Your own personal medal, your own personal victory. I am also personally a huge fan of before and after photos. It's not so much before and after, it's recording the journey. It's recording your transformation so you can reflect on how far you've come and be proud of that. Without seeing those, that feeling, that experience, that doesn't happen because you do forget how far you've come and what you used to look like. So yeah, for me, they're a big tick, and I would always encourage anyone with a physique goal to to not even explore them, to do them.
Let's go into a little bit of the detail with the progress pictures. So let's talk about how often you should take them. Let's talk about um, how to set them up. Let's talk about good time frames to have in mind when it comes to what you compare to, just so we've got a little bit of a framework in place for doing these.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to muscle building, you're looking at maybe intervals of 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even a bit longer. Perhaps when you first starting out in your muscle building journey, you want to do them a little bit more frequently. So you've got that kind of, I guess, that reward and that checkpoint a little bit earlier. But then perhaps as you get further into your journey, you might not need to have that validation, I guess, as frequently because you know your actions are resulting in the outcome that you want.
But also
Um,
on a similar level, Katie, when you're a lot of people will start their first kind of building phase, whether that be maintenance calories or slight surplus. They're not sure how their body is going to look and respond to that because they haven't had that experience. So
Very
the
true.
more frequent progress pictures will prove to them, look, you're not gaining fat. This weight that you're seeing increase. Is most likely going to be from muscle tissue. You get to see how your body's shaping as you go through that process. Yeah, with beginners, I might encourage some slightly more regular progress pictures. I might get them to do them every 4 weeks or so, 4 to 6 weeks. When you're more advanced, you're not going to see huge changes in your muscle growth in 6 to 8 weeks' time. That's the reality. The more you train for, the more experience you get, the less likely you're going to see massive changes in shorter periods of time. So you might want to extend those progress pictures out a little bit longer, 8 to 12 weeks. There's no set amount on this one, but just know that earlier on or less experienced individuals may benefit from more frequent ones. Those that are a bit more experienced, you might take those a little bit further apart.
I think it's an important point you raised there about when you transition to a building phase from a fat loss phase for some time. Absolutely encourage them more frequently. Definitely 4 weeks, a month once you're back at higher calories. But even in some scenarios, I've done them a week and a 2 weeks after returning to maintenance. If you're an individual that's particularly worried about gaining body fat, returning straight to maintenance, relying on the scales alone will probably send you crazy. But, because they should go up and that should be happening. It's likely to happen. So having those photos then to back that up the first week, the second week, that actually you haven't gained body fat, it's a real good marker of, okay, yeah, I can eat this much and I'm not regaining body fat.
Yeah, I agree, and I've done the same. I've used progress pictures more frequently, like you said, a week or 2 weeks apart when we've gone into a building phase for the first couple of weeks. That's normally, like you said, to assess whether body fat is being gained rather than
Yeah.
being able to really assess muscle growth. So it's probably more for the purpose of that.
And this,
Yeah, it's unique to each individual, I guess.
absolutely unique because that's only needed for the purpose of just giving you some confidence that you can go back to maintenance calories and not regain body fat. So you feel like you can hold out in that building phase for a bit longer, right? But once you get into that building phase a little bit longer, then you probably won't need that validation again of progress photos going straight back to maintenance calories.
I think there's also some really useful comparisons that can be drawn from particular stages. So, by this, what I mean is if you finish a certain phase of your journey, that's where I would take a progress picture and then you can compare that to the end of another phase of your journey. So, for example, if you've just finished a fat loss phase, that's a great time to take your progress picture because you've lost a lot of the fat. So, any muscle you had underneath will be revealed from that progress picture. So, you'll take a snapshot of that moment in time where you're at your leanest and you can see all the muscle you built up until this stage. What you can then do is compare that to another fat loss phase. So it might be the fat loss phase you just did before. It might be the fat loss phase you did the year before. It might be a fat loss phase that you do again in future. And you compare those end of phase um, pictures against one another. So that will give you a really good indication of how your muscle is changing. Same with when you're doing a build phase. You might take progress picture at the start of your build phase and at the end of your build phase, but you might also compare the end of one build phase to the end of another build phase.
For sure, and I think that's a really important marker actually, right? Because it's the other point here, Sean, is it could be the end of the building phases that you compare. But the other one I think is handy that we've done is comparing the same body weights at different times. So, for example, speaking to Charlotte yesterday, compared to photos of her from 168 pounds, one was the end of the building phase and one of it is her currently now. And yeah, it's the same weight in the scales, but she is leaner in that second photo and her muscles showing more, right? So those can be really handy comparisons as well.
I think they're some of the best comparisons you can do, actually. You're not always going to get back to the same weight again, but this is something that I would monitor. And if you can see yourself getting down to a same weight that you've been in the past, and you know that you've got a progress picture from round about that time frame, I would go out on my way to take a progress picture that week to be able to compare back to where I was in the past. And sometimes these are some of the best comparisons you can make. Because if you're the same weight, but you've got less body fat and you've built more muscle, your body composition has improved, that's going to show in the progress pictures. When I look back to, I did a comparison not so long ago, I believe it was 200 pounds. So I compared 2 or 3 different time points where I have been 200 pounds, around about 200 pounds. And the difference in the progress pictures is really obvious. And that is so rewarding and motivating. But for individuals that have any hang-ups about scale weight, this just completely blows the scale weight issue out of the water, because you can look vastly different at exactly the same weight if your body composition has changed. So having less fat, having more muscle will make you look very, very, very different. So it kind of, let's say, de-risks the fears that people have about scale weight is going to make me look worse. It doesn't.
Very important point. It can be really easy to get caught up in the scale weight, particularly when you're trying to chase body composition goals, perhaps haven't done a building phase before, right? So seeing those comparisons can be really, really helpful. What I'm taking from this conversation is you pretty much compare what you want to compare. And there's loads of different angles that you can take. You can even compare, like, you line up the whole journey from different fat loss phases to building phases and see how your physique changes.
Like a timeline.
Yeah, like a timeline. I think it's once you've been doing it a couple of years, you want a decent timeline for that. Otherwise, it doesn't quite make sense. Or there's not enough of a timeline for it to be, I guess, a good enough story to follow. But once been doing it a couple of years, it can be really, really motivating actually, and help with that drive to want more, because like, wow, I've done that, I built that, I made those changes, and no one's going to take that away from you. Like, that's yours now. So it's nice sometimes to do a timeline like that too.
Final point when it comes to getting progress pictures, try and be consistent with your setup. So where you take those progress pictures, certain part of the house, for example, be consistent with the clothing that you wear. Minimal clothing is better. So if you can just do it in your underwear, then that's best. Be consistent with what you wear. It does really diminish the value of progress pictures when you've got completely different shorts on, different bras, different underwear. Try and wear the same things each time if you can. Be consistent with the lighting as much as you can as well, because lighting plays a massive part. And we also mentioned about the posing too. So just practice the poses and just get consistent with those. From a practical standpoint, some individuals find it easier to just film like a progress video. So they do all the poses, they do all the stances into a video format, and then you can get screenshots of those poses rather than have to keep going back and forth to the camera. Take a picture, it's on a timer for 10 seconds, you rush back into the middle, try and center yourself in the shot. You don't always have somebody there to take a progress picture for you either. So it might be easier for you to just set up your phone, do a progress video, and then take screenshots from that progress video afterwards.
Yeah, I find that much less stressful actually. Even though we've got each other to take the photos, yeah, I think I still prefer taking that video most of the time, because there's no pressure to get the pose perfect, spot on. You just move through the motions. You also, and this might make some people feel uncomfortable, but you see your body from all angles, right? And you may be hating on that right now, but a photo just shows you one angle, that's it, and it might not be reflecting everything that you've worked hard for. But if you've got a video of you just going around the poses, front, side, back, different angles, different poses, you can just have a look at that and really reflect on where you're at, and what other changes you'd like to make as well. So yeah, that might freak out some people now, especially if photos are something that makes them feel uncomfortable. But the more exposure you get to it, remember, it can only be for your eyes if you want them to be for your eyes only. But the reward and satisfaction you get being able to reflect on those throughout your journey is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So that's progress pictures then. And for me, progress pictures are the gold standard way of checking to see if you've built muscle. They're probably more of an obvious one. I think most people would expect that to come up in this conversation. What about some other types of pictures, Katie, that could potentially be used as a way of checking if you built muscle?
Any social pictures, really, kind of, and by that I mean any pictures from previous holidays, any memories. Most people, other than people that generally don't like being in a photo, we all have them on our phones now, right? Might not have many, but you will have some. Don't be afraid to look back at those and compare them to where you're at now. Same outfits, different outfits. Doesn't matter too much, but you're going to be able to notice the differences in your body shape, in your physique. Just looking at some old photos and comparing them. It's quite surprising sometimes when you look back. You think, wow, I felt I may have felt great in that picture, but actually look at the difference now. Or you might look back and think, I'd never want to go back to that, but look how far I've come.
Yeah, absolutely. We're framing this very positively, but I think it's worth noting at this stage that some individuals will look back at previous progress pictures when perhaps they've been in better shape than they are now,
Very true.
and they will feel disappointed with themselves or feel a bit guilty that they've for want of a better way of putting it, let themselves go. They may not have actually let themselves go, but that's the thought process that goes through the mind, right? We could do a whole episode talking about this stuff and the mindset around comparisons to your previous version of yourself, but just some quick checkpoints with that. Is the stage of your life the same? You can't expect to have exactly the same result if you've had 2 or 3 kids in the last few years. If you've completely changed your work circumstances, you might have been in a new relationship, been much more comfortable with yourself. You might have felt like that's not really as much of a priority. There might be other things that have got in the way. Whatever it is, right? It's important to reflect on what has changed since that event and whether it's realistic for you to be able to do the same actions in the same way that you were doing them before to get the result that you got to before. It might not be as valuable to you now as what it was back then, or it might be the case that it is still valuable, but it's not realistic to have the same level of input. So that's where I would start with that comparison if you're going to make that comparison. The second thing is, let's be optimistic about what can be achieved, because if you've done it once and you can probably do it again, but you might need to change your strategies and methods. You might need a different approach to what you did last time because, like I mentioned, your circumstances change, your lifestyle changes. You might need to update things. The things that work for you back then may not work for you right now. And if you're listening to this and you find yourself in that position, then it might be the case that you need to look into some different options to what you've tried so far. If that's the case and you think you'd like our help with that, you can reach out to one of us using the links below. Have a chat to us. We'll give you a free conversation talking about your goals. We can talk about what you need to be able to get back to where you want to be and progress beyond that. All our coaching is one-to-one, heavily personalized. This means every detail in your program is structured around you, your needs, your goals, your exercise preferences, your dietary preferences. This isn't a copy and paste program that we adapt for you. It is built for you, custom made, using your feedback and your individual needs.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. One thing I'd like to add that is if you've got an idea in your head of what you used to do to be able to get a result, and you're thinking, Christ, I can't go that hell to leather anymore, like it's just too unrealistic, then there will be another way. I can promise you and assure you that, especially if you're looking back at your younger years and thinking, yeah, I look great then, but I could get to the gym X amount of time. Just cut this out of my diet. That's not realistic now. Whatever it may be, there is another way. There's another way for you to make this work right now. So explore it rather than think I can't do it because of it's not possible because of what I used to do. And if you haven't started anything at all, there is a way for you as well. But like John said, our coaching is one-to-one, very, very personalized down to every detail. So just have a chat with one of us anyway. More than open to share our thoughts with you.
So we covered off some of the more obvious signs that muscle is being built, and that will come from the visuals that you see, progress pictures, and also other pictures that you will take when you're going about your day-to-day life, going to events, going on holiday, etc. Now we're going to talk through some of the other ways of assessing muscle progress, which perhaps you may not have thought about so much, or you have thought about, but we're going to tell you that they're not very reliable, so you should stop thinking about them. Let's talk about another form of progress that you can literally just record on your phone, and this can be done in the gym.
I'm going to assume here you're talking about training videos.
I am indeed.
I actually love looking back at these. I think it's such an eye opener to how far you can go in a journey. Now, of course, there's that initial concern or worry or feeling uncomfortable taking a training video initially in the gym. I've been there. I know Sean's been there. And you feel like all the eyes are looking at you when you're recording, but really, no one really cares what you're doing.
No, most people are more concerned with looking at your recording to make sure they're not in the recording. They don't care that you're in the recording.
No, absolutely not. And, if anyone really did have a major concern, all you could say is, "No worries, I won't record to you right now, and respect it." It's just being a human, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I would encourage you to take them because, again, it's you seeing you in all angles, and that might feel uncomfortable right now, but when you can reflect back on that, when you've made progress and you can see the muscle in when you're performing a arm movement, for example, it's really rewarding to see the muscle growth in action.
Yeah, you're seeing working muscles a lot of the time when you're performing exercises in the gym. Similar to what I said about posing, if you're not tensing the muscle, if you're not flexing the muscle, it's hard to see the muscle. It's a similar format when it comes to the training videos. You're seeing the muscles as a working model. So when you've got these videos, in the same way that you can take screenshots, you can use so many different apps to help you with this. You could probably use AI to help you with this, to be honest. But there's so many different ways you can capture those screenshots. If you get a training video and you want to make some comparisons, take some screenshots of it and compare it back to an old training video view or some screenshots from an old training video view. It's such a simple way to be able to see your progress. And it's something that will also provide a lot of benefit for your lifting progress too. Seeing how your performance in the gym is improving technique wise, the weights you're lifting. So I would say that it's a big win to be able to have those training videos and something that a lot of people don't even think about when it comes to assessing muscle growth.
To be fair, for us, that probably wasn't the main reason we took the videos initially, right? The videos were to reflect on form because it's very, very helpful to see yourself performing to understand what tweaks you need to make because you can't see yourself when you're performing these movements. So even myself as a coach now, I still record my movements to see what things I need to change and tweak because we can get complacent with movement patterns. But anyway, that's another side tangent that I obviously don't want to go down today. But the point I'm trying to make is we started off taking them because it was a tool to help with performance. But as time gone on, it's like, hang on, I look back at this video now and wow, look at the changes in that. Look at the muscle mass I'm carrying there. Look at the muscle I can see there, or, and so on.
I do it all the time with clients. And I think part of this is because posing is a skill practice. That's why there's posing coaches, which charge money to teach other people how to pose when they want to get better poses. So it is a skill practice. It's something that does take time to get right. And sometimes progress pictures don't reveal quite as much when the posing isn't done to a really good standard. And that's not to put you off. You should still try and you should still practice it because it's still better standing there in your pants with your arms down by your sides and expecting to see a change. But the training videos can actually make up for a lack of skill sometimes with your progress pictures. The amount of times I get client training videos and I see them and I'm like, wow, look at that muscle in that. Like, and I'll screenshot it and I'll send it to them. I'll say, look at your muscles here. Like, you look fantastic. Look at your arms, look at your legs. You can see all that definition in your back. So yeah, absolutely. Get the training videos. They serve multiple purposes. Get over that fear because you're probably going to be more worried about whether you make progress or not because you're not looking at any measures of progress than the fear you're going to feel by setting a camera where nobody else is in the background at a certain angle and to record your form in the gym. And the easiest get out, if anybody ever says anything, the easiest get out is, oh, it's for my coach. Nobody will ever question it. Nobody will ever say a word. It's the most normal thing. Oh, I've got a coach. My coach wants to see my form. Zero further questions.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Don't think I've got anything else to say on videos other than get them done. How about mirror glances when you're in the gym then, Sean? Not even in the gym, I guess. Anywhere, right? Anywhere there is a mirror.
So we all do this, right? We all catch ourselves in the
Cheeky little
mirror.
ones.
We walk past, like, spend 10 minutes in the shower, 5 minutes later in the mirror beforehand or afterwards. The point of the matter is we all do this. We all see ourselves and we do a little bit of a pose or we try and present ourselves in a positive light. Gives us a small little bit of a dopamine rush. In a funny sort of way, this does actually provide a little bit of posing practice as well for individuals that go past and they try and hit their bicep pose or whatever, or, get the glutes out. Look, these mirror poses are not really reliable for comparison purposes. Yes, okay, it might give you a little bit of a dopamine rush and a pick me up when you're looking good in the mirror. You might take that progress picture, but then because you're taking that progress picture and it's time stamped and it's on that particular day, then that might actually be useful. But then that's a progress picture of the mirror shot. I'm talking more about the standard mirror glance that checking my biceps in the mirror in the gym or checking my biceps in the bathroom mirror. You're not going to remember what it looked like before from that. You haven't got the prior comparison. So it's not very reliable in terms of assessing results.
No, I agree. I don't think it's very useful for assessing results, but I think it can give you some confirmation sometimes that, oh, that's changed. That wasn't like that before. Or, I perhaps didn't have as much curvature here before. So I think it's not that rule them out totally and don't use mirror glances to support your journey, but they're probably not the best comparison tool.
No, I would use these as a little pick me up, or, a little bit of a motivational boost. Something where you say, I like the way this looks. Like, oh, I'm impressed with how it looks in this shot. It's not to say I've built muscle because XYZ, or it's not to say I'm definitely building muscle in this area. It's not confirmation that you have built muscle, but it is a good way to be pleased with how you're looking, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think it does make sense.
If you're going to draw a conclusion that you've built muscle, then in order to do that, you need a comparison. You need something to compare it to. So if you've not got the comparison, then you can't definitely say that you're building muscle just because your muscle looks a little bit bigger in your interpretation in the mirror. Unless, of course, it is ridiculously obvious, but let's face it, for most of us, it's not quite that simple.
It's just using it to appreciate where you're at sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what you can do.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
good way to put it. It's like an appreciation tool,
yes, an appreciation tool.
not a comparison tool.
Yes, I think that's the best way to summarize that.
Another one which fits into this category is how your clothes fit, because this can be a bit hit and miss, can't it, Katie?
It can. And, the main purpose of this podcast is around how can I tell if I'm building muscle, right? And when you're in a fat loss phase compared to a muscle building phase, how your clothes fit are going to serve a different purpose, outcome comparison. Because fat loss phases, if they are feeling looser, then you can assume you're losing body fat. But when it comes to muscle building, there's going to be certain clothes that perhaps you fill out more in certain areas, which could be a sign that you're building muscle in that area. But it could also be a sign that perhaps maybe you're gaining a bit too much fat in that area too. And that can be hard to tell a difference sometimes. So I think it's just about being aware of that and knowing how to use it. Would you agree, Sean?
Yeah, I think you need to be open-minded. If you're wearing the same clothes, you're wearing the same outfits, you can sometimes put on clothes and think, oh yeah, I'm definitely filling this out more now. And if your scale weight hasn't been flying up at the rate of knots, and if you have seen some progress in your progress pictures, and then you put on, say, a pair of jeans, for example, and you're like, yeah, these definitely feel a bit tighter in certain areas, but you can see other progress markers elsewhere, then yeah, those clothes might be a further confirmation that you've built muscle. It can be quite difficult to just use clothes on their own, as you said, when you're eating more food and things like more carbohydrates, you've got more water weight, you're going to fill out your clothes a little bit more anyway. It's hard to know if that's being filled out by muscle or just because there's other tissue. There might be a little bit more fat, there might be a little bit more water retention. There's probably going to be a little bit of muscle, but it's hard to know how much. So we're not saying that you can't tell you're building muscle at all from how you fit in clothes, but just be open-minded to it not giving you the full picture.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think another one that's on a similar front to this is measurements. Probably not a biggest fan of using measurements when it comes to.
Things like body measurements, tape measurements.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
when you're, measuring a particular circumference of the body, whether that's your arms, legs, waist, glutes, again, it's not a hard fast rule not to use them, but how accurate they can be is probably a little bit misleading at times, actually.
Yeah, they can be a bit unreliable as well, can't they?
If you're doing it after you've been to the gym and you've got a pump, it's going to be the measurements on your bicep are going to be a little bit more than the couple of days after if you were to measure them not after training, right? So there's that to bear in mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's taking them in the same sites, like every single time, like be in exactly the same location. If you're not trained on how to take measurements correctly, because there are guidelines to follow for this stuff, taking the measurement in exactly the same site. If you think about your thigh muscle, for example, right, like your thigh muscle has got different thicknesses at different parts of your thigh. So if you want to record your thigh muscle circumference and track that as a method of progress, then you need to make sure you're recording that circumference in the same place every single time. A lot of people don't go through the hassle of doing that. They just go, oh, it's roughly midway down my thigh. Let's take a
It looks a bit similar to what I done
yeah.
last time. Yeah, that's about
Yeah,
right.
yeah, that's about right. Yeah, we'll take that.
Gone up a couple of centimeters, like, well, hey, I'm building some quads
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
next time they eyeball it and it's gone down a couple, like, disappointment hits, right?
Well, that can't be right. I can't have shrunk.
So yeah, measurements serve the place. Again, it's looking at the bigger picture overall.
Yeah.
We'd never suggest using only one tool to measure progress, would we? But with measurements, it's for the purpose of muscle building.
I probably wouldn't bother. I mean, you can gain loads and loads of fat as well as some of the muscle that you gain on your arms, and you're measuring the whole lot. Like when
Mhm.
you do your tape measure, you're not only measuring the muscle you've gained, you're measuring some fat and water retention as well. Scores can be inflated sometimes for certain measurements, and yeah, it's not something that I would necessarily encourage, and I certainly wouldn't be aiming. I certainly wouldn't be setting any goals based on measurements. Put it that way.
No, not me. It's more the visual when you get to building muscle, isn't it? That determines the course of action for the next couple of months or what you need to do, and the results that you see. So yeah, no, I fully agree there.
There is one form of measurement that I think is worth tracking on a very frequent basis, though, to help assess muscle building. I mentioned it earlier, but that's scale weight. And we'll
Mhm.
touch upon this a little bit more when we come to another section, which will discuss the rate of muscle gain. But just know that scale weight can somewhat reliably correlate with muscle growth, and it can predict muscle growth pretty well, especially if you're combining it then with progress pictures and training progress logs, which we'll also get onto in a moment. So yeah, small increases in scale weight on a weekly basis are a pretty good sign that muscle is likely being built.
I agree. And a very useful tool, actually. Refreshing way to look at the scale weight as well. If you're an individual that's been focusing on fat loss for a very, very long time, can take a little while to get your head around it. But seeing the weight go up, your muscle's got to weigh something, right? And if you're not visibly seeing a lot of body fat gain happening, then what does that mean?
Yeah, my question is, if you want to build muscle and your weight does not increase at all, what's going on? Are you confident you're building muscle? I wouldn't be confident, because if you're building muscle, it's got to weigh something. So I would expect the scale weight to go up on a reasonably consistent basis. Um, your body needs the extra calories and the extra fuel, because muscle building is a very costly process in terms of energy. It takes a lot of energy. There are certain pathways and processes which happen in response to having more energy and more protein. So fueling that process is important. And a result of fueling that process and eating more means that your weight is probably going to go up slowly.
That's a good thing. And it should, within reason, which we'll cover a little bit later on.
Yes.
How about training progress then? Because obviously training is the most important thing when it comes to building muscle. Without that, it isn't going to happen, right? So how can individuals use their training progress to understand if they're building muscle?
Training progress is such a great way to track how your muscle progress is going, because when we think about those progress pictures we talked about, they're quite large gaps between those progress pictures. So you've got to do some sort of process. You've got to train and eat enough for 8 weeks or so, really, before you get that visual confirmation if you're waiting for progress pictures. So training progress is an amazing gap filler. Same with your weight, which is recorded weekly. Your training progress is something which is an amazing gap filler to help in the short term for you to go, I'm pretty sure, because you can't confirm it fully, but I'm pretty sure that I'm heading in the right direction when it comes to building muscle. Now, hopefully, anybody that listens to this podcast will have a training program. And with that training program, you'll be tracking your progress in the gym. If you're not doing that, then please start doing it right away. But you should be seeing improvements in your training, and you should be keeping a track of what reps you perform, what weights you lifted, maybe, and we would recommend tracking how hard that set was as well, rated perceived exertion or reps in reserve. But look, we should be tracking at the very least what weight you lifted and how many reps you performed with that weight. And what you should be looking to do is progress either of those or both, but normally it's one or the other over time. When you start, you're more likely to see progression in the weight you're lifting or the amount of reps you're performing from a week to week basis. You're more likely to see increases more frequently earlier on. As you get a little bit more experienced, you might not necessarily see improvements on a week to week, on a session to session basis. But over time, you'll start to see improvements in the lifting. If you're training hard enough, if you're taking the sets close enough to failure, if you're consistent enough with those movement patterns and with those exercises.
That can be a bit of an adjustment sometimes, can it? Going from the beginner stage, should we say, or new program stage to adjust into, okay, I've been doing this a little while now, because it can feel like, oh, I'm not making as much progress because the weight isn't going up as quickly, or I'm not doing as many more reps every week. That's normal and that's okay. It's not, you're not looking for those big jumps all of the time. You're looking for consistency in your performance. And then all of a sudden, one week you go, oh my God, I just lifted another 2 more reps here.
Yeah.
And that's a big win. And I think normalizing that is a huge part of the journey, because when you start lifting, it's like, wow, I'm progressing quite quickly here, really quickly. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's slow down. Like, what's going on?
And that trend almost mirrors your muscle growth as well. It almost
Mm.
mirrors your rate of muscle growth. As a beginner, you grow muscle faster. You're progressing more in the gym more quickly, and you'll also build muscle faster. As you get more experienced, you don't build muscle as quickly as we've mentioned, and your performance and progression in the gym doesn't happen as quickly. So they correlate really well with one another, actually. So it's probably something to bear in mind. There's a bit of a nuance with being a beginner in the gym, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you get strong quite quickly when you first start out. And like we mentioned, you see those numbers increase at a fairly fast rate and from week to week. But it doesn't necessarily mean muscle is being built in those early sessions, those early weeks, early months, whatever it may be. It's slightly going to be slightly different for everyone, right?
Yeah,
Um,
we have some pretty strong data on this, don't we, in the scientific literature, where beginners tend to get stronger quicker than they build muscle in the very early stages of lifting. Should we give some brief explanation to why that happens? Why do people get stronger before they then start to build more muscle without getting too complex with it here?
Basically, when you first start, you're utilizing the muscle fibers you've already got. They're going to get stronger from being exposed to new loads, but they'll get to a point where you've recruited as recruited all of those fibers, and the next stage is to build more muscle to be able to get stronger.
Yeah, essentially you're starting with what you've got, and your body adapts to what you're telling it to do in the gym. So your exercises are basically producing a signal to contract your muscles, and your body will use what muscle it's got and contract with whatever muscle it's got to be able to do those exercises. When you start to progress, your body gets better at using the muscle that you've got, more efficient at using the muscle you've got, and the muscle fibers respond to that and get stronger. But then eventually, like Katie explained, you get to a point where the muscle you currently have is not enough to continue to lift more. You need some more muscle fiber. So that's where the muscle fibers will grow. And what that will do is it'll allow you to have more contractile elements to be able to then produce the force required to lift more loads. So, in short, your training is the signal for your muscles to grow. And if you continue to push that over time, then you'll notice your muscles will get bigger. But for beginners, the most efficient way for your body to start lifting the things that you're telling it to lift in the gym is to use what it's already got. That's the fastest A to B method that can be used. So it just strengthens what it's got and uses what it's got and gets better at using what it's got. So we see much greater strength increases in beginners in the early stages because it's not really necessary for them to have more muscle just yet to be able to continue to improve with the lifting. There's also a skill component to lifting when you first start. Like, for want of a better way of putting it, some people start like Bambi on ice when it comes to the exercise performance. It's a bit like none of the limbs feel like they're in their control. And it just takes a little bit of a while to refine those movement patterns and get them to actually resemble the exercises that they're trying to perform. It feels a bit uncoordinated, a bit like when I try and dance. Just everything's a bit clunky and uncoordinated. So that is a skill practice, and getting better at that exercise and being more efficient with how you perform that exercise will increase your lifting numbers in the gym, whether that's more weight or more reps. But it's not necessarily because you've built more tissue at this stage. It's just because you're getting more proficient at how you perform the movement pattern.
You're getting better at using what you've already got.
Yeah, 100%. But then, after a while, to give you a rough time frame, probably about 6 to 12 months in, if you've been performing movements consistently, if you've got good form by this stage, if you're well coordinated, then you can start to correlate increases in strength with an increase in muscle mass. Because by this stage, the only way you're going to continue to get stronger is with more muscle mass.
I agree. And for advanced lifters, it is a stronger indication that things are heading in the right direction because you're no longer just utilizing what you've got. You were trying to build new tissue to progress with, right? So to be able to lift more weight, an advanced lifter is going to need more muscle mass to be able to lift more load. And that's reflected in numbers going up in weight down reps. Not only, the reps and weight that goes up, when you're an advanced lifter, you perform in the movements pretty well. Your skill level is no longer beginner level, it's advanced level, right? You're able to perform most of those movements at a pretty decent standard to be able to recruit the muscles that you should be recruiting to drive the muscle growth.
So to confirm, training progress is a good indication that you're building muscle if you're seeing your weights go up in the gym, if you're performing more reps with the weight in the gym. It's a pretty strong indication that things are heading in the right direction. And if you keep progressing with that, then muscle is surely to follow. It's perhaps a stronger indicator if you're more advanced at your training because you're already coordinated, you've already got the skill proficiency, you're already capable of recruiting your muscle fiber, your body's familiar with those movements, it's familiar with getting your muscle to contract to perform those movements. So you're not just improving because your technique has improved from week to week, you're improving because you're building more muscle in order to provide enough force to lift the weight that you want to lift. Now, there are some nuances to this as well, and there are a few caveats. If you start a training journey with a coach and you have a program that's personally designed for you, so the exercise selection is really well matched to your level of experience. So the movements you're performing can be performed with relative ease straight away. You don't feel really uncoordinated with them. You feel like the performance matches your level of ability. Then you can get your teeth into that movement a lot quicker. You'll be able to start performing it with a lot more consistency week to week. You'll be able to start progressing a lot faster with it week to week, and you'll get onto the muscle building stages of using that movement a lot faster. Similarly to this, if you've got good nutrition protocols in place, so if you're told how much to eat and what to eat, if you've got really good amounts of protein in your diet with high quality sources of protein, those that have coaching earlier on in their journey will probably reach the muscle building part of the beginner stages far quicker than those that don't. Just another shameless plug for coaching here, Katie, to be honest. But we see this in members in their progress pictures. We see this early on. We see it earlier on than we expect sometimes, where you can clearly see that muscle building progress in the early stages. And we even see this in lifters that aren't beginners because of the way that the training program is set up for them, because we specifically make changes to the things which are less efficient for them that they were doing in the past. And we prioritize things that will be more efficient for them to build muscle at this stage of their journey, as well as tweaking things like their training technique, encouraging them to lift a certain way. All of these small details can make even more advanced trainers see greater progress in a short space of time.
It's quite amazing to see actually when an individual can implement these things from beginner right through to advance and the results they get in a short space of time compared to what they were doing perhaps for an advanced lifter for months and months and then without any return. For me personally, like, when I reflect back to me starting out years and years ago, I actually wish I got a coach at that time. I would have saved years of just trying to figure it out. Of course, I like having the experience to be able to help others now, but you can get that even with hiring someone to fine tune things for you from the beginning.
There's a clear correlation for me in my journey. The better I've got a coach in, because my knowledge has advanced more, the better results I've got in my own training. There's a reason why I'm now in my 30s, where most people start to say, oh, well, it's all downhill from here. Yeah, I'm getting the best results of my life over the last few years. And that correlates with when I've been the best coach I've ever been, because my knowledge is getting more advanced. I'm understanding things on a deeper level. It's not just knowing stuff as well, it's applying stuff and knowing how to apply it. And that's something that I obviously wasn't doing in the past. It's all well and good having understanding and training techniques, but if you can't put them into practice and you're not putting them into practice, then it's not worth anything really. The true value of knowledge is how it's applied. And yeah, I agree with you, Katie. I think the early stages of that training journey, you're so sensitive to progress, you're so sensitive to muscle growth. And it's not to say that I didn't get progress, I did, but I sold myself short a lot. And then the habits that weren't in place, well, they weren't in place for when I needed them the most, because I probably got away with not so good habits in my beginner years because you are so sensitive to growth, and you will, you as long as you're training regularly, you will probably see progress anyway. But that well dries up pretty quickly. You're then left without your beginner gains, without that sensitivity to muscle growth, with lifting habits that aren't necessarily going to be as progressive. And if you don't fix those and you don't change those, then you could waste years of progress. And that's exactly what I did.
I probably wasted a few years as well, to be honest, where I could have, when I've actually lost the amount of body fat that I wanted to lose, transitioned to muscle building a lot earlier on in my journey. And that's one of my biggest regrets, is not transitioning to that earlier than I did.
Definitely. So keeping an eye on your training progress is really important, actually, and it does correlate pretty well with your muscle growth, especially for those that are more advanced. But it's also something that you should keep an eye on as a beginner, because eventually your lifting progress is going to be more indicative of muscle growth. Just make sure that you're training pretty close to failure the whole time as well, because we see this in the research. It's more stimulative of muscle growth if you train closer to failure. So we've spoken about this a lot in previous podcasts. 0 to 2 reps from failure, ideally, is the area you want to be in for pretty much all of the work you do, if you can do it, or as much of it as possible in that range.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on body fat testing? So, would you use body fat tests to help inform us on whether or not you're building muscle?
Personally, I wouldn't. I wouldn't recommend using them to measure muscle mass and how much you've got and how much you've progressed. When it comes to body fat testing, you obtain the lean body mass from the body fat test, but lean body mass isn't just muscle mass.
No, it's everything, isn't it? That's not fat.
Yeah, it is. And it's highly sensitive to external factors such as how hydrated you are, such as have you just done a training session, certain meals you've just eaten, whether it was very,
High in sodium.
yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of external factors that may influence how much lean mass shows up on whatever body fat test you're using.
Yeah, and even these body fat tests themselves vary in terms of their reliability. There's lots of different measures you can use for body fat testing, but any one measure has a certain degree of unreliability. So what we mean by that is you can take the same test 2 very similar times on the same day, and you will get different measures and different outcomes. They don't always give us very clear results to compare to another test. So just the fact that these are somewhat unreliable to begin with probably suggests that we shouldn't really read into them too much.
I think that's the important point to note there, is that Sean, it's not reading into the results too much. So they are widely used by many people. I think it's just understanding the pros and cons to them and how variable they can be, so that if a result potentially, one time you stand on maybe the body fat scales, for example, shows that actually you've got less muscle mass than previously, but you've been doing all the right actions, it's very unlikely that that test is really a true reflection of where you're at.
These tests are a little bit ropey for even assessing body fat. They don't always map very well to how you look when we use them to test body fat. The lean body mass, which is essentially what we're deriving from the body fat test and trying to then use as our marker of muscle progress, is perhaps even less reliable on top of that. They're probably not worth reading into too much. And considering that you tend to do body fat tests reasonably similar intervals to your progress pictures, why not just do the progress pictures?
I know it's probably a bit easier to do, be consistent with in terms of how you're doing them, performing them as well, right? Because all of these body fat tests come with an element of you must have a skill set to be able to perform them and conduct them well, know how to do it in the same environment, etc.
Look, just cut out the middleman. Why do you do a body fat test? You do a body fat test because you want to see if you're making progress. And the progress you want to see is a visual result. So just cut out the middleman. Don't bother with a body fat test. Just do the test which makes you more aware of actual visual progress, your progress pictures.
Yeah, because even if this body fat test result said something, but you still weren't happy with the visual, does it really matter what that body fat test result says?
Yeah. And conversely, if the body fat test says your body fat is worse, but you visually look better, would you care about what the body fat test says? Not really. So, yeah, I don't think we need to worry too much about body fat testing personally. So that just about covers all the different methods you may consider to assess muscle growth. And as we've identified, there's probably a large degree of them which aren't that useful, or maybe conditionally useful.
Or useful when paired up with something else.
Yeah. There's a small group of them which seem to be more powerful at assessing your muscle progress when you're combining them together. Just before we kind of summarize what those are, I think it's important to talk about the realistic rates of muscle gain that you can expect to see as well, because it's all well and good having ideas of how you check progress, but you also need to be able to assess whether the progress is,
Heading in the right direction?
yeah, whether it's normal, because I think we all want to know, is this a normal amount of muscle for me to gain?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of easy to know if you are losing body fat at the rate you want to lose it at, right? It's a simple measure. So it's how can we get a simple measure that allows us to know on a more regular basis if muscle building is potentially going in the right direction. Let's break down how much weight per week someone can expect to see if muscle building is heading in the right direction. So, Sean, I would say around 0.1 to 0.2% of body weight per week.
Yeah,
Is
that's what I would go by, broadly speaking. That's a pretty safe bet for most people to know that they're building muscle but not gaining much fat, because that's what we're trying to avoid here, aren't we? We're trying not to gain loads of fat. So,
And you
yeah,
mentioned broadly speaking, right? Because there may be some people that are really on the low end of that, but there might be some people that are a little bit higher than that too and still not gaining a lot of body fat. So it's just a rough idea to work with when it comes to muscle gain. So let's give an example here then. An 180-pound individual, this is between 0.18 to 0.36 pounds per week.
that's quite a small amount, isn't it?
Very small amount. When you're looking at the increases, it might not be that every week you go up the same amount. So it's important to you to note, I think, that that is a guideline to work with, but still look at focusing on the averages over time rather than, oh, I gained 0.4 pounds this week. I must be gaining too much fat. It's not a case of that. It's a case of looking at your trends over time. And if week after week you're gaining 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds, then you're way off the mark, right? And you're likely going to put yourself in a position where you are probably gaining more fat than needed at this stage of your journey. You want to kind of minimize that as much as possible so you can stay building for a longer period rather than panic button hitting in and you wanting to cut earlier. So it's knowing the guidelines and not being too rigid with them at the same time.
Like Katie said, this is a broad range. So you compare this with your training progress, you compare it with your progress pictures, but it's important to note that if you're seeing your weight go up really, really, really quickly on a very frequent basis, then there's a very good chance that what you're gaining will be fat and not just muscle. And please just use a bit of skepticism, common sense with this, because we see the most absolutely ridiculous weight gain figures quoted online by how much muscle people have built in a gaining phase. We saw a coach online, which we're not going to name, but we saw a coach online post about her build phase the other day. It was what, 6 kilograms gained in how many weeks, Katie?
Like 12 to 15 weeks.
12 to 15, 6 kilograms in 12 to 15 weeks. It's absolutely insane. Like, that's an insane rate of gain. There is a very, very, very good chance that that's not all through building muscle. There's a very good chance that that person has gained a lot of fat. But for her audience that are looking to build a bit of muscle, if they're gaining weight at a slower rate than that, and they're seeing this coach post about that rate of results, and then they go, well, I should be gaining more, and they bump their calories right up, and then they start gaining loads of weight, they're going to gain loads of fat. They're going to end up having an opposite outcome to what they want. They're going to be going back to a fat loss phase, which then is going to mean that they have to restrict themselves, not build muscle while they're losing fat because they've got to get the fat off. And that's delaying the muscle building progress for even longer. There's a reason why we're being conservative with these figures here. Myself and Katie have both worked with a number of clients that have muscle building goals that have accidentally gained too much fat in the process in the past. We have worked with a number of clients that want more muscle, but have always spent their time losing fat and struggle to get that process right, so they can't actually get themselves into a muscle building state for long enough. And then you've got these other coaches that are posting really harmful, misinformed guidelines for how much weight people can expect to experience, which is just going to add further problems into the field.
Yeah, I agree fully. It may even put off a lot of people actually pursuing muscle building goals. The fear of regaining, 6 kilograms. You're talking what, that's nearly a stone of weight
Yes, 13.2 pounds.
in
It's like a
a
pound
couple
a
of
week.
months, you're talking 3 to 4 months, and that takes some time to come off, right? That takes some time to come off afterwards. So it's a case of finding that sweet spot where you are gaining weight, but you want most of that weight to be muscle mass, not fat mass, because that's defeating the object of changing your physique. So being a bit more conservative with this gain allows you to not overshoot things too quickly, allows you to find your groove with a muscle building phase and really enjoy the benefits of it without feeling too uncomfortable in your body. And it allows you to actually stay leaner year round, which and go into probably make an assumption here, but a fair assumption, I think, that most people who are chasing physique goals, not bodybuilders now, but just, everyday people like me, like you, that most of the year you generally want to stay in pretty decent shape, in pretty lean shape. You want to feel good most of the time. You don't want to be gaining, a stone and feeling pretty crappy about yourself for a number of months. You want to stay lean for most of the year. And that your next fat loss is just going to take you further along, not potentially just losing the fat you've already gained and hoping that some of that is muscle. Because the reality is, if you're only spending 3 or 4 months a year building muscle, but most of that then is actually fat gain, how much muscle are you actually building? Because most of your time then is spent losing fat. So if you can spend 8 to 9 months of your year building muscle, that is double the time spending building muscle. That's going to change your physique a lot more than overshooting a muscle building phase.
And the more experience you get, the more you need that time to build muscle, the more you need to spend those longer durations doing it because it's a slow progress. So you're just shooting yourself in the foot if every time you try and gain muscle, you overshoot that and you gain lots of fat.
I couldn't agree more. And I just want to drop in here, right? Because this is probably one of the most successful building phases I've done in my whole journey. And I'm coming up to 8 months in this building phase now. And I've probably put on about 4 or 5 pounds in total across that period. Maybe I've been a little bit more conservative than I could have pushed a little bit more. Who knows? Results will tell now after the end of my next cut, right? But I know I've built muscle for the various different methods that we discussed, and the tools that we've discussed in this podcast. But very minimal fat has been gained in that process. So I can be confident to say that that muscle gain that I've had in the last 8 months, that some of that, if not more of that, is going to be muscle. And that changes a lot of physique. Like, don't underestimate what a couple of pounds of muscle does a year.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been gaining muscle for the same time frame. My average rate of gain per week is around about 0.2 pounds per week of gain. So around 0.1% of my body weight gain per week, maybe a little bit more, but it's definitely below 0.2% of body weight gain per week. So that tells you that it should be slow. It should be small increments. One thing I would like to add to that, just quickly, is that a lot of people include the weight gain they experience in their first week or two, moving from a diet phase or a fat loss phase into a muscle building phase. Now, you should not involve that weight in your rate of weight gain in your building phase for the simple reason that every single time you leave a fat loss phase and you go back to higher calories again, be that maintenance calories or calorie surplus, you will experience positive weight regain. That small period, and it's normally about 2 weeks, unless you do a wacky reverse diet protocol, but it's normally 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, you will experience large weight regain. It's not through fat, it's through increased glycogen stores, increased water retention, which we have discussed many, many, many times on this podcast. That classes as your diet recovery phase. That is not the start of your building phase. Your building phase starts really, as in when you track the start of your building phase, from a week to 2 weeks out of your fat loss phase. Really important.
Very important, right? Because what you gain in that period, that will vary from individual to individual. But that could be 2 to 3 to 4 pounds for some individuals. So you want to make sure then that you're starting your building phase calculations from that point.
So going back to that coach you mentioned earlier, what if she just come out of a fat loss phase? She regained three or so kilos in her diet recovery phase, and then she gained 3 kilos over 15 weeks. Well, that sounds a lot more realistic now, doesn't it?
That does sound a lot more realistic.
But it's making that clear distinction to know that you haven't gained she's still misinforming people because she hasn't gained 6 kilograms of muscle. It's just not going
And
to happen.
let's be real, that can be really demotivating to people because, like, 6 kilograms is a lot of muscle mass. Like,
Oh, it's ridiculous.
it's I can't even, like, get the words out to explain how much that is.
You won't be able to visualize it.
It's,
Like you won't be able to visualize it. Go and put it into ChatGPT. Take a picture of yourself. Go to ChatGPT and say, "I want you to add 13 pounds of muscle to my frame. I want you to add 6 kilograms of muscle to my frame. What would I look like?" And you see what image that comes back with. It's quite substantial how much difference
mm,
that makes. Like
and that's not gonna happen in a 3 to 4 months building phase, I can assure you that. Not even a beginner is going to do that in 3 to 4
a
months.
fully optimized beginner would be lucky to get that in a year, and they can do. But
Yes,
like you're
agreed.
talking like that's some really good going.
Mm,
That's some really good going. And this is the thing. Everyone is going to experience muscle gain at a different rate. As we've discussed, beginners will gain weight much faster and they could probably gain more body weight than 0.2% of body weight per week as well
agreed.
on a consistent basis and not gain that much fat because they're so sensitive to muscle growth that that process is by far outpacing what's happening in terms of fat gain. So you can actually benefit more from that as a beginner. Also, very lean individuals like those that have come from kind of post photo shoot, post diet, post photo shoot, post contest prep, for example, or somebody that is just naturally super lean, they may also benefit from gaining weight faster as well, because it might be healthier for them and they might help them to gain more muscle mass when they've regained a little bit of fat. So there are nuances to this, right? There are
They really
individual
are.
considerations. You've got to remember that if you were to stand there holding a pound of muscle in your hand, that's a significant chunk of muscle. Slap that somewhere on your body, that's going to be really blooming noticeable. Some of your muscles are really small muscles. Like if you were to actually take them out of your body and put them on a lab table and have a look at them, they're actually quite small muscles. Like some of them would be pretty much doubled in size if you add a couple of pounds of muscle to that muscle. So we just need to have a bit of common sense with this, I think, and really consider the bigger picture. We're not going to expect to see massive amounts of weight gain on a week to week basis with muscle growth, but we should expect to see some on a reasonably consistent basis.
Like you said, John, there are nuances, right? Um, Unfortunately, not going to be able to cover all those nuances on this podcast. So we're just going to give a rough ballpark that people can work with in their own journeys.
If you're not comfortable with experiencing regular weight gain and you're not experienced with running build phases, and you're not sure about how your body's going to respond and you're worried about excess fat gain, we would recommend taking progress pictures on a more regular basis because it will confirm whether or not your body is changing in the way that you are afraid of it changing. If you are gaining too much fat, you've got regular progress pictures. There's not long between those progress pictures. You can make adjustments before things go too far. And if you confirm you're not gaining fat, then happy days. You're doing the right thing. Continue as normal.
I agree. Never use the scales as the only tool to measure progress, isn't it? It's use it as part of many tools to paint the bigger picture. I think when it comes to the scales, being precise is quite complicated. From the numbers we've given, there's fine margins, isn't there? And this is where it's helpful to look at your trends over time rather than put in too much emphasis on each week at a time.
Yeah. So having a rough target in mind of small, steady weight increases. There'll be some weeks where it doesn't go up, some weeks where it might even go down a little bit, but you want to look at this as a direction over time. If you notice multiple weeks in a row where things are not moving in the direction you want, then that's where you make an adjustment. We're talking like 2, 3 weeks in a row. Same as what you do with fat loss. If you get a plateau over 2, 3 weeks, you're probably going to lower your calories a little bit or you're going to increase activity. If your rate of muscle growth isn't going up 2 or 3 weeks in a row, then you look into, is my training progressing? If yes, then it's probably something to do with your calories. If your training isn't progressing, maybe it's your training that needs an adjustment. Maybe it's performance in the gym. It might be both. But don't be too quick to make adjustments if you see 1 week or even 2 weeks sometimes where things aren't moving in the right direction. You can make that adjustment to suit you. Just a little segment before we summarize, Katie. As we've discussed, muscle building is a long process. It does take time. We do need to be patient with it. One of the challenges which comes with that is that it's hard to stay focused. It's hard to experience enjoyment in a process where we're not immediately rewarded by some sort of progress and results. Because unfortunately, we are impatient little buggers as human beings, aren't we?
Yeah, I want everything done yesterday.
How would we manage that as coaches? And what advice could we give the listeners to help out with that?
I think there are a number of things you can do to just find reward in the process, to keep things ticking over. Obviously, we talked a lot about the results and seeing those, which will keep that kind of drive high and that motivation high. I think the important thing is not worrying about being optimal all of the time and get everything spot on, because that can be quite stressful. It can be a lot of pressure to be optimal all the time when, let's be real, life doesn't allow you to be just optimal in your training, your nutrition, your sleep, your recovery every week, because life does get in the way. So it's knowing that keep ticking over, because you can still keep making progress with going to the gym. If that's a couple of sessions less than what you're used to, you can still keep ticking over, and accepting that it's okay not to be optimal all the time, because that can relieve a lot of pressure, I think.
That also relates to the exercises you choose. It relates to the training split that you follow, like even just moving your sessions around. So let's say, for example, you want to go and train with a friend for a day. So you don't do your upper body day on the same day that week and you change things around, or you might miss a few exercises off because you're following their program or whatever. It's learning to accept that these things won't actually play that much of a part in the long run. They're going to have such a small impact on your progress and your achievements. That's the one thing which kind of acts as a bit of a safety net for muscle building, because it is such a long-term process, because it does take so long. Minor changes will likely not lead to that much difference anyway. It's doing things consistently and repetitively over a long period of time. Unfortunately, it's the boring answer that nobody wants to hear, but it's the truth, that gets you the result that you want to have with muscle growth. And sometimes finding ways to make something a little bit more enjoyable means you might put a bit more effort into that session. You might put a little bit more effort into that training week. You might find that you're more focused because you're enjoying what you're doing, or by training with somebody else and having a training partner, even if the exercises aren't quite so optimal, even if it's not necessarily the most well constructed program. Just the fact that you're training with somebody else might get you better results. You look back at the you can listen to this on so many different podcasts. I've listened to so many different podcasts with people that were training in the 90s, the early 2000s, where we had so much less understanding over training science than what we do now. But the gym atmospheres were better than what people experience today, because people were going in, they were doing these bro science kind of almost unguided methods, but they were doing it with each other, they were pushing each other, they were having fun. It was all about, hard work, but having a good time. And you go in some gyms nowadays and everyone's got headphones on, everyone's on their phones, everyone's looking for a certain strap to attach at a certain angle and pull at a certain direction with a certain tempo. And look, I'm a freaking nerd when it comes to training. If you watch me train, I'm probably one of those guys that's doing that kind of thing, right? But you can still make a very strong case for, if you're enjoying it more, you'll get more out of it. There has to be some sort of consistency with performance. Yes. There has to be things done to a high standard. Yes. I'm not saying to neglect that, but I just think enjoyment is such an underrated part of this journey. You should want to commit to building muscle to life for life. And in order for you to do that, you have to find ways to enjoy the process.
I couldn't agree more. If you're not enjoying something, you're quickly going to switch off from wanting to even engage in the process the smallest amount. So, like you said, Sean, training with a friend is pretty helpful there. Making some friends in the gym so it's a bit more sociable and you can have a chit chat about anything and everything while you're there. There's certain exercises, this is where you don't need to worry about having the optimal exercise. If you hate the optimal exercise, why are you doing it? Just swap it out for one you enjoy more, because you're not going to gain an extensive amount more muscle become from the optimal version to the next best option. You're going to get more active if you actually enjoy it and do it more than skipping it because you actually hate the optimal exercise. That's another thing to think about. On your training split, please do not overthink this. Do what you enjoy and do what allows you to get the work done you need to get done.
If you're fed up with it, change it. Just change it. You're not going to earn any medals for forcing yourself to put up with something you absolutely hate for 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks at a time. I'm a big fan of discipline. I'm a big advocate of being consistent and all that stuff. But
Coming from someone who hasn't changed his training program split in months now, right?
look, like, I would not advise that many people to copy what I do. Nobody's training program looks exactly like mine. There's not a single client I train that has a training split exactly like mine, because I know that I have got different outlooks on why certain things are in my program. It's made perfectly for what I'm trying to achieve. And some of the reasons for why I'm doing stuff in my program are vastly different to why any other people would want. I'm playing to my strengths with my program because I don't mind doing the same thing on repeat time and time and time and time and time again, week to week. I get value from different things. I get value from seeing my weight go up 1 rep over the course of the last 3 to 4 weeks. I get value from taking myself really close to failure and feeling how hard a set is. I enjoy the interactions with different exercises and how I can tweak my technique a little bit and then work that same technique for like 5 to 6 months to see if it makes a difference. I'm at that stage of my journey where I have to learn to be patient. I have to appreciate patience. And I also want the best possible results I can get. So I'm going to suck it up a little bit more because that's what my mindset is focused on right now. And I enjoy the fact that I know I'm doing closer to the optimal things, perhaps more often. When I get really, really sick of a movement, I'll swap it out. But a lot of the time, I've just been performing the same movements on repeat for months and months and months and months on end. On the same level, when I get a message from my client that's 8 weeks into their program and they say, I'm absolutely sick of this movement, can you swap it? I go and swap it straight away.
I think the beauty is everyone is different here. Touching upon that, Sean, none of our clients are on the same program. They've all got their own unique personalized program. Because yes, you want it tailored to your goals, and that's a huge part of it, right? If it's not tailored to your goals, then what is the point? But it's not just that, it's more to it. The enjoyment side of the gym is actually huge as well. And there's going to be certain exercises, movements, setups, session duration, you name it, whatever it is, it's going to be different between person to person. I don't like training how you like training. You don't like training how I like training. Everyone is different and it's such a huge part. So never underestimate the importance of enjoyment in whatever methods you are choosing. And if it ain't working for you, change it. This will allow you to then reward yourself for the little things along the way because you're enjoying the process and you can shift your focus to celebrating the PBs, enjoying the good sessions for what they are, feeling rewarded for doing the hard sets. You're not then thinking about, I hate this exercise, I don't enjoy that. Okay, I'm doing something I love. Now let me enjoy the little things along the way.
And those little things, what I have learned coming from somebody that is capable of doing those same things on repeat, that doesn't mind getting bored of something. I don't tend to get that bored with exercises. If I'm progressing with them and if I'm seeing improvement from them, I don't tend to get bored with them. But part of that is because I do celebrate the PBs. I track all my lifting numbers every single week. I track the intensity of every set every single week. So I know exactly where I'm at. I can clearly see my progress on a week to week basis. I can celebrate having a good session. I can celebrate when I've done a hard set. When I put 0 reps in reserve, when I know I've gone to failure, I can celebrate the fact that I've worked really hard with that. I'm getting confirmation that I'm working hard and I'm doing well, and that is really rewarding to me. That is really motivating, and that's the part of training that I enjoy. I enjoy knowing I've done a good job.
I have to agree with you. I think when you get so far into your journey and you understand the actions actually that are required of you to drive a particular result, you do start to enjoy, or not so much enjoy, but seek the reward from the smaller things because you know those smaller things are stacking up to the bigger things that you want.
The way that I look at it is I want to experience this as if I'm a beginner again. I want to experience the same enjoyment, the same enthusiasm, the same excitement as being a beginner again. When you're doing things for the first few times and when, you're seeing the weights go up quickly, you started doing a new exercise and your technique's getting better and your form's getting better. Like the excitement that you get from that and the buzz that you get from that, you don't tend to experience that again once you become more advanced at lifting, unless you go to a completely new gym and you use different equipment or whatever. So for me, it's about reminding myself that the things that worked really well to build my enjoyment and excitement when I was just starting out are still things that I can try and look for when I'm training now. So when I am getting that progression in a movement pattern, when I am performing an exercise with really good technique, just because it's expected of me now that I'm more advanced doesn't mean that I shouldn't still celebrate that and be positive about it and encourage myself as a result of doing it. Think about how you would encourage one of your friends or a family member that was just getting into the gym for the first time. Like, what would you do? You would praise their good sets. You would praise their exercises. You would praise their intensity that they bring. You would praise them if they've gone up in weight or if they've done more reps than the previous week. You give them that positive encouragement and positive reinforcement. And it seems simple to do it for other people. And if you think about doing it for somebody else, but you should be doing that for yourself too. And that's part of the enjoyment for me.
Celebrating the little wins along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Micro improvements, setting mini goals, like chasing a little mini strength goal. I have been chasing a 100 kilo Bulgarian split squat goal for about 2.5 years. And I've finally achieved it. This last couple of weeks. And it's things like that that have allowed me to keep one of the most grueling exercises you can perform in the gym in my program for the vast majority of 2 years. I've subbed them out for a short time period, but I've always gone back to them within about 8 to 12 weeks. Do you know many people that would perform Bulgarian split squats in their program for more than 8 to 12 weeks?
No, I I am that person that doesn't want to perform those for more than one training phase.
Yeah, you're one of those people
I
that
am
message me and they're
one of
like,
those.
Sean, I want them out.
But in fair, I'm a sucker for reverse lunges, barbell reverse lunges, and I really enjoy that movement. I can't really pinpoint why I enjoy it, but I enjoy it a lot more than doing a Bulgarian split squat. So for me, they have been a consistent in my program other than when Bulgarians are swapped out. And for me, it got to a point where it's like, okay, I get quite strong at these now. Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
let's see if I can lift a body weight reverse lunge. They'd done that. And then I was like, oh my God, how further can I take this now?
What are you lunging now, Katie?
Oh, it's either 82.5 kilograms or 85 kilograms. I can't
I'm
remember what it
pretty sure
was.
last session it was 85.
85. It's gone up quite a lot the last couple of weeks, actually.
Here's the thing, right? This is again is just emphasizing how you play to your strengths. So Katie has kept a movement in that she's a big fan of. Why she's a big fan of lunges, I'll never know.
Well, you're a
It's
fan of
just
Bulgarians, I'll never know.
yeah, but that's the thing. I'm not a fan of them. I absolutely hate them. I detest them. But I love the feeling of completing them, and I love the feeling of progressing with them because they're one of the hardest movements I've ever done in the gym. And they're one of the hardest movements that I'll ever force myself to do. So the fact that I'm forcing myself to do something that's really hard brings me enjoyment. So I'm playing to my strength. I'm like, I'm doing something that's really, really challenging here. And then I've also set myself a goal for getting better at that. So I've got even more emotional attachment to it.
Whereas I'm just a sicko of you that likes reverse
You
lunges.
just like an exercise, but guess what? You've gone from, and I'm literally looking at your stats here. So yeah, you were doing 70K earlier on this year for your reverse lunges at the start of your build last year. Okay, for reverse lunges. Now you're up to 82.5K. So 82.5K lunges. That's insane. That's ridiculous. But yeah,
Yeah, it is a bit, isn't it, when I think about it? I don't really sat and thought about it. Oh, I love it though. I love being strong.
so again, set mini goals for yourself, seek micro improvements, and play to your strengths. In summary of this podcast episode, then, how can you really tell if you're building muscle?
Take the visuals. Take the progress pictures. Visuals are gold standard.
100%. In between those sets of progress pictures, trust your weight data and keep track of your training progress because those will indicate that muscle is being built in the short term. Then you confirm those data sets with your progress pictures.
Your training videos, your clothes and social pictures from previous to now, they can be useful too. Remember not to use these in isolation, but use them as part of the measurement tool collection.
Yeah, they're options, but we wouldn't put those at the top of the list. Other things like your random on the spot mirror glances, tape measurements, body fat testing, they're just not worth considering. Expect muscle building to take a long time. It's not a fast process and it gets slower the more you do it. That might put some people off, but it's a reality. And for me, there's nothing more disappointing than having an expectation that's unrealistic and then not being able to achieve that. You're much better off knowing from the off that muscle building is going to take time. You're going to need to be patient with this. But if you are consistent, don't underestimate how far you can go in a few years' time of building muscle.
And I don't think there's anyone I've ever spoken to who has this goal in mind, who then are actually committed to a longer journey that have regretted it.
And it absolutely flies by as well when you look back at it. It seems like a long period of time now, but ask any of our members who have worked with us over the last year or even 2 years, you ask them how quickly that process has gone. It does fly by. For those who are a bit more advanced, do not underestimate how much difference it can make just adding a few pounds of muscle to your physique a year. If you've already got some muscle and you're adding more on top, it can make a huge, huge improvement to your physique.
And just learn to love the process, and the results will follow. Without engaging in the journey, without rewarding yourself along the way, without actually finding ways to enjoy the process, the results are unlikely to ever come, right? Because you're not going to be able to stick it out long enough. Engage yourself in the process, immerse yourself in the process, enjoy it, and that physique that you really want, it will come.
Very well said. If you'd like to learn whether you're using the right techniques to build muscle, don't forget to head to the description and take our free lifting habits quiz. Learn what you've already been doing well, learn what you can improve, and receive some free tips on how to put new techniques into practice right away. Use this knowledge to make sure you're building as much muscle as possible and carry this on for the rest of your lifting career. It'll literally only take you 2 minutes to complete, so get cracking today if you want to get the best rate of gains you can get.
Yeah, it's a really good quiz, actually. Thoroughly enjoyed making it, putting together, and what you will learn from it is really, really going to excel your training journey. So I highly recommend heading over to the description and giving that quiz a go. By our next episode, we both would have started our aggressive fat loss phases for the summer.
But don't worry, because we'll be recording the episode before we start. So it'll be the episode after that where we're complete zombies and it'll be pretty much pointless listening to.
Talk for yourself. Talk for yourself. There may be a little bit more bickering, less patience, maybe less tolerance. Who
Katie might
knows?
be asleep.
It's all right. Catch me in the morning, and I wouldn't have turned into cabbage mode by then. But we will be discussing in that next episode our plans for executing our aggressive diet phases for the next 10 weeks. How we would balance any summer events, because it is going to be my birthday in the mix of all of this. Sure, we've got a few other things going on as well. What we will do without training, and how we both survive without killing each other, because we're hungry people, right?
I'm absolutely lovely. I don't know what you're on about.
Where's your mother? Let me get her on the phone.
Don't bring my mother into this.
But anyway, that's it for now. We'll be back in the next episode, and we'll see you all next time.